My voice, I have a bit of a chest infection, so if I'm gappy, I'm sorry. First of all, I think we should celebrate today because it is very historic, and it's amazing to be standing here and to be involved in drafting and helping to shape this legislation. I saw you both, Minister and Deputy O'Connell, on the march last Saturday, the Choice March. It was quite a celebratory event, even months after the winning of the referendum. It felt really good, and there were, again, you know, tens of thousands of young people there recognising their role in all this. I think we should celebrate the fact that we've achieved a huge amount. This time last year, we were sitting on the Joint Oireachtas Committee, hearing the evidence and going through the detail. And we had the referendum at the end of May, and it was a very, very decisive. You can't, you know, argue with the outcome. It wasn't a kind of a 52-48. It was an absolute decisive outcome. So there's no argument there. But we were held up because there are organisations and individuals in this country who will never stop contesting a woman's right to choose to control her own body. And I think it's really important that this legislation doesn't leave any hostage to fortune, to those who might use their own wealth, might even risk their homes and remortgage them in order to continue to take High Court and Supreme Court cases, as they did during the summer months, to try and obstruct the outcome of the will of the people. And so the tone of this, the tone and the sort of language that's adopted from start to finish in this piece of legislation is really, really important. And therefore, I think what we have to try and do is to put women and the choices that women make with their lives at the heart of it. And I say that because I want to very much agree with the Deputy Louise O'Reilly when she says there is a problem that up front and loaded is the question of the criminalisation. It shall be an offence to intentionally end the life of a fetus, even those words, the life of a fetus, to intentionally end the life of a fetus, and not to use the word abortion. That's, you know, smacks of the 8th Amendment all over again. The life of a fetus versus the life of the woman, etc. The language is really important. Otherwise, we are going to leave the door open to legalistic challenge. There's nothing in here that says it should be a crime to intentionally obstruct a woman from having an abortion, which I'll talk about later on when it comes to the conscientious objection clause. So, you know, having said, I do think that this time last year we were looking at the nuts and bolts of it, and now a year later we're legislating for it, and that's a fantastic thing. But we do need to watch out for those banana skins, and that chill factor that hangs over the medical profession because of the upfront loading of the offences has to be dealt with. I know we're going to get loads more chances to do this over the next couple of weeks. I think that we need to really think carefully about how we put things in there that weren't part of either the Citizens' Assembly or the deliberations of the Joint Oireachtas Committee. And I say that because whatever things we might leave out from the Citizens' Assembly, but putting things in there that didn't form part of them, and here I refer to the 3-day go back and think about it stuff. That's really important that we don't do that. And I do believe that that was a political decision. And I know you'll nod your head, Minister, about that, but I do believe it was a political decision to stick it in there because it doesn't adhere to best international practice. It does happen in some countries. But as you said yourself to us yesterday, in, for example, Holland, where they have a 3-day wait period, the clock starts ticking from the time the pregnant person picks up the phone and says, I want an appointment with my doctor in relation to a termination of a pregnancy. If that was to apply here, grand, because it'll take at least 3 days to get a GP's appointment anyway. As I've said before, I wait a week to get to see my GP, even if I have a chest infection. Now, they do their best to facilitate you, but clinics in Ballyfermot and big urban areas are very busy places. And we have a complement of GPs to citizens that is way below the European average. We also have lots of problems, and I'm sure Dr. Carty can talk about that, about how GPs are not paid or paid, and there are less and less doctors staying in the profession as they are qualified. They are leaving this country. So I'm really delighted you've appointed Dr. Peter Boylan to oversee all this. But when it comes to accessing abortion services, and particularly medical abortion, we have a real problem with our health service, because at the heart of this is women's health, and our health service is creaking at the edges. And if there's a problem with the GP delivery of ordinary things like an antibiotic for a chest infection, of being able to see people quickly enough, then this is going to be a real problem for delivering proper choice for women. I think we have to look at that very, very carefully, and there will be amendments on the loads of amendments, I'm sure, on the Treaty thing, which was, I believe, inserted for political purposes. And then definitions are really important here, and the definition, as Deputy Coppinger has already talked about, of the pregnant person, that it's not just a woman, it's somebody who is transgender, and we need to have that in there as a sentence somewhere, that when we refer to woman, we refer also to transgender, and we're not excluding anybody. The definition of health itself should be inserted in there, because the World Health Organization recommends that included in the definition of health is not just physical and mental, but also social. And I think that in this country that's hugely important, because there is a huge amount of social exclusion of women in direct provision, among the travelling community, young girls, etc. And I think that should be included in it. A medical practitioner is defined as somebody listed on the register. Well, I think this would help if we really change it. It would help us deal with the access question, because there are midwives and there are nurses out there who have more experience than most doctors in dealing with pregnant people. And I think they should be included in the definition of medical practitioner, particularly for medical abortion. What would be the big deal about going to see the nurse in the Ballyfermot clinic instead of having to see one of the doctors to procure the pill and to be able to be supervised by that nurse or by that midwife? A friend of mine last week had to have the abortion pill. I helped her procure it, but I didn't help her through it. She helped herself through it. And she said to me afterwards, the only reason she was able to get through that without really being distressed was because she's already had 2 children. And she understood what was happening in her body. She understood that she was beginning to go into a sort of a soft labour, early contractions, and she understood and expected heavy hemorrhaging. And she said, I can't imagine what it would be like for a young woman on her own going through that. She said, it's absolutely timely that we have this legislation going through. So I really do think we need to extend the idea of who is and who isn't a medical practitioner when it comes to giving people access to medical abortions. On the conscientious objection, I mean, I have friends who are doctors, and they tell me that it's part of the Medical Council's thing that there's conscientious objection for all sorts of reasons, and I've often wrongly quoted the Mormons. I believe it's the other church, now I've forgotten the name, who refuse often to do blood transfusions. The Jehovah's Witnesses, thank you, Kate. So the conscientious objection clause exists, but the problem we have here is that we need a much stronger impetus that they must refer on, and that referral on must be immediate, and it must never be denied. And I think there has to be a criminal sanction for denying to do so. If you're going to criminally sanction practitioners for helping women to make the choice, then you must criminally sanction those who refuse to help them make that choice. I would like to see a body that polices that operation, so that if I live in the Glenties in Donegal, for example, and no particular reason for picking on that, only I like it, and there's one doctor in the village, and he or she says, no, not giving it to you, I conscientiously object. No, I don't know where you can go, but I'm in the middle of very, well, not nowhere, Glenties is not nowhere, but I'm very difficult to get access elsewhere. Then I would like to think that I have a place to go to say, I was treated terribly by that doctor, and I have a body that I can complain to that will deal with my complaint immediately. Not the Medical Council, because Medical Council is about doctors, but an independent body that has the health of women and the concerns of women, almost like a feminist body, that would say, absolutely, we're not having that, and some kind of a policing over the way it is done. The other thing that's not in the bill, and I hope there's no need for it, because I hope that it's widespread in this country that we believe, and the referendum showed us, that we trust women and that we want women to have a choice. But if we have people standing outside hospitals during the referendum with 30-foot high banners that are frightening and humiliating and disgusting, then we need to have safety zones for women and practitioners, and I think that we need to have a close look at that. Thank you.
Deputy Joan Collins, sharing with Deputy